What screams, "I'm a bad parent"? Story 1. Not believing in telling your children no. The world will and should tell them no at times. They need to be prepared for that reality, or they will be an absolute menace to everyone around them. I never understood the never say no to your children concept. Understanding and respecting the word no is the fundamental cornerstone of bodily autonomy, consent. One of the most important social concepts the child will have to learn. They need to understand both that they have the right to say no, a right they need to learn very early on, and that they have a responsibility to respect when others say no. I worked in childcare for a couple of years and had this one toddler who had pretty much never been told no by his mom. So naturally, when I or another teacher would tell him no, he would throw a huge tantrum. I could literally calmly tell him something like, "No, you cannot stick a fork into an outlet because it will shock you and you could get seriously hurt." And he would be throwing chairs and flipping tables. Then we would report this behavior to his mother, who would of course not address it at home, so it would continue. Defiance and tantrums are normal for toddlers, and they do not like hearing the word no, but they need to hear it in order to outgrow that. The kid is probably 6 or 7 now, if I'm doing the math right, and unless his mom has flipped some switch, he's probably still that insufferable and will be as an adult as well, and women may have a tough time with him as well. Kids love finding boundaries. They are curious by nature. Diversion and distraction have their places and are wonderful methods to coach and collaborate. But a firm and stern no, with due follow-through, is one of the best rules of the world a child can learn. Both of my kids went through these experiences. Overwhelming emotions caused them to react physically because they were not able to regulate and communicate their emotions properly. We were in hospital with one of ours a few years back, and there was a couple with their toddler who were the textbook definition of this. The toddler was wild, and the parents were an anxious ball of mess. Everything he did, they would just say, "Okay." It was as though they were absolutely terrified of him, like he was Satan himself. That was a child that had never ever heard the word no. We had to move him on a few times as he was being loud and keeping every other parent and child awake, and doing things that any normal parent would stop immediately. The parents weren't buttholes, but were clearly absolutely freaking terrible parents. It was baffling to witness, and I've never seen anything that weird since. My pediatrician said to limit the word no, not because they shouldn't be told no, but because overusing it can cause temper tantrums. Using phrases like, "We aren't doing that right now," or "That isn't safe, let's do something else." It's saying no without saying no. But I do agree parents should still say no to their kids. This is what we were taught in child development and used in daycare, specifically for toddlers and 2-year-olds. They get negative attention when you tell them no, so it ends up being a game. Notice parents at their wits' end with that age because the child refuses to listen. No has been overused. That means you lock up what they need to stay out of, so you don't need to say no, and divert attention away from what they want to, what you either need them to do, or what they can do. You focus on planning transitions better, too, so that's where they don't say no comes from. It should be reserved for emergencies or danger, but that doesn't mean you let the child do whatever. It takes more to work to give them alternatives. It's better in the long run, though. As an example, they want to climb the crib, but you obviously don't want them to climb the crib. We can't climb the crib because it's not safe, but we can go to the backyard and climb on the jungle gym instead. Doesn't that sound like fun? Let's go outside. You've told them no, but they don't realize it. Story 2. Your adult children don't talk to you. Yeah, it took me a while to understand that wanting to go no contact with my parents is a failure on their part, not mine. It helps me, personally, to occasionally reach back out to my crappy parents to basically reassess the situation. I am a forgiving person, mostly because the weight of being angry at her is too heavy and has caused me so many issues in adulthood. It's much easier to justify my actions after I send a "ready to get over it yet" message and my mother sends back a 12-page essay on why I'm the crappiest person to ever walk this earth, and she could never deign to speak with me again unless I agree to her narrative that I am a bad person. Then I just say, okay, I'll try again in a few years. It also staves off the, you should try to talk to her type of people, and helps others see her for what she really is, rather than blame me for closing off the communication. This is so real. Every time I've dipped my toe back in, I've waited to see how patient she is with me, and it doesn't last long. I hadn't thought of it in a check again in a few years way. Thank you for that. Glad it helps. I believe all people are capable of change, but it's easier and more comfortable not to change. I tend to check back in every few years and see if my mother has had some sort of major revelation, especially since she has severe mental health issues. But I'm not holding my breath. More just double-checking for that $20 I might have left in my pocket. My mom effectively disowned me. She never said those words, but her actions and what she told other people made her feelings clear. For a long time, I kept trying to keep that bridge up because you always hear stuff like, how will you feel if they die? And the last words were in anger. Even my brother would tell my other siblings things like, he just needs to get over it and sort it out with her. She isn't getting any younger, and he's going to regret it if she dies. After 5 years of beating myself up emotionally, I stopped trying to call her. I had a realization that she had been effectively telling me that she did not want to talk to me or have anything to do with me, and it was time I accept that and move on. So I did. I told myself she's welcome to call me, but I am done reaching out. My last conversation with her was about a year later. She wasn't happy that I had told people she disowned me. It's a short spot with her, since her father straight up told her that if she left his house, she could never come back. She never spoke to him, or really anyone else in her family, after she turned 19. So when I had the gall to tell people that she disowned me, she was not happy. I was long past the point of caring. I confronted her with the fact that she told one of my sisters that they all need to stop discussing family things with me, and that I shouldn't be involved in any family business. She tried to dodge, and then admitted it. The last words I said to her were how proud her father would be that she turned out just like him, and then I hung up on her and blocked her number. She died a little under a year later. I have a lot of resentment, anger, and sadness towards my mom, but I don't have regret for how things played out. She is the one who gutted our relationship and refused to try and rebuild something. She is the one who refused any and all attempts to try and fix things. So I know that however bad things got, it wasn't due to my lack of trying, and I can live with that. Story 3. Using your kid as therapy, and then getting upset when they have issues regulating their emotions. My mom, 100%. She told me some really heavy stuff about her childhood when I was 6, so I spent a good deal of my early adulthood figuring out how to process my own problems. Dad told me he got assaulted when I was 8, asked me if I still thought of him as a man, as he broke down. He would invite me to sit on his lap as he scrolled through rotten.com. Same boat. My mom put all her relationship issues and insecurities on me, and I only just started being able to get past all that stuff with therapy during the past couple of years. Nearly ruined my own relationship, the rest aside. I'm glad you're able to get therapy and feel comfortable enough to talk about it with people. I think that's a huge step forward for your mentality. Same. My mother was so toxic, passive-aggressive, and isolating that I had to cut her off 7 years ago. She passed this summer and left my brother and I with a mess to clean up. My grandfather and great-grandfather ended their own lives. Not only did I know that at 6 or younger, but the specific details of how they did it. My grandmother disappeared. Poor with 5 kids at 21. I now understand how overwhelmed she must have been. They told us she jumped off a bridge. I found her on the internet a few years back. She was already gone, but I know some of the truth. Roscoe Arbuckle is my relative, so I've always known what he was accused of too, but always told how he was railroaded. All of this was on my maternal side. Thinking back, that's a lot to tell a kid, Why would you saddle them with that? My dad, when I was a child, kept telling me how he and his sister had to eat breadcrumbs because they were so hungry and poor, when I said I was full and couldn't eat the bowl empty. Also talked about world hunger problems, and when I was about 13 or 14, he told me, forgot what it was originally about, but again, something to do with me, I guess, that he had thought of ending his own life, but I was the only reason he didn't. Yet he treats me like crap. I'm 24 now. I don't know, my mom told me sometimes about her problems when she was drunk, or sometimes how she would have ended her life if me and my brothers, weren't there. I was like, 9? I don't even understand why she's drinking alcohol, even though it could become freaking lethal. Like, what the F? I don't think of myself as anything above normal. I'm just another human being. We are individuals that have our own unique ways of dealing with trauma. As far as your question is concerned, well, that's a tough answer. I just feel better off. If I were going to give you one factor, it would be the fact I'm comfortable sharing this part of my life with people. Before, I would keep it bottled up, which was attributed to self-destructive behavior. I'm more open and honest about myself. Story 4. Zero interest in the kid. Doesn't care what they do or what happens to them as long as they don't inconvenience them. Only caring for the child when they do what you want them to do. For example, if they play the sport you want them to play. And when they inconvenience them, violence solves the problem by shutting the kid up again. Recently, we were at a family gathering where everyone was bringing out their home videos from when my cousins and I were little kids. We were 6 cousins total, and in the videos, you see all my cousins playing with their dads, having fun, and my dad turned around and asked, "Where is my kid? Why are we not in the videos like everyone else?" I had to resist the urge to scream at him that he came home almost every day at 10 p.m. drunk out of his mind, and the only time we ever spent together was the 20-minute drive to school in the mornings. He still wonders why I'm such a terrible son and never ever calls him about anything. Similar experience, except my dad was never drunk, and I didn't even have the 20 minutes every day. The only time I got to spend time with him was when he needed me to help him with physical work. I met a mom like this. She had a son who had a severely lower than average intelligence, and she just ignored that he existed. She was extremely studious, earning many degrees as an adult, and she seemed insulted that she had given birth to a child who had significant difficulty with schooling and couldn't understand social cues. It was a super shame, because the kid was super nice. He would often interrupt conversations, just wanting to contribute, but unable to know how. And he loved football, and was the high school equipment manager, and the team seemed to like his enthusiasm and support. But the few times I shared dinner with the family, they would all be supportive and loving of the kid, except his mom, who just seemed blind to her kid. I don't know if the kids were aware that she was so dismissive of him, so not sure of what damage she did, but he did light up around his dad and grandparents because they genuinely loved him. Sucked his mom didn't seem to, especially since he was such a nice kid. Just awkward. Story 5. Invalidating your child's feelings, struggles, and or mental illness in favor of, you don't know what struggling really is, or some form of back in my day, or you kids are so weak. You have just robbed your child of support, told them their feelings do not matter, and informed them that you are not a safe person to confide in. I remember coming home from freshman year in high school after a particularly bad round of bullying that day, mid-90s, and trying to talk to mom about it. All I got was, "Life's a witch. Sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll get over it. It'll never be fair." Zero sympathy, no empathy for sure. Fairly sure tough love was the agenda or thinking, but lack of love is what I took away from it. On one hand, my mom's not wrong. Life is freaking hard and not fair, but lack of love is the price she paid for her teachings. Later, in my 30s, she asked me why I never talked to her much or share many details of my life with her. We had a good heart-to-heart about how this approach in her parenting led to my distancing from her. While we'll never be close, At least we had an adult understanding, and she apologized, and wishes things were different, and regrets her actions. It'll never be perfect between us, but I will say to those out there, it can get better as you grow older. Their stress isn't relative to your experience. It's relative to their experience. A 4-year-old stubbing their toe might be experiencing the worst pain in their entire life. Just because you snapped a femur and have had countless other injuries that have tempered your pain response and ability to manage yourself, it doesn't mean stubbing a toe isn't that bad. Stress can be viewed as the difference between expectation and reality. As you mature and learn the possible outcomes of situations, your expectation broadens to include situations that aren't ideal, and you learn how to better deal with contingencies and mistakes and outside influences. When a situation goes bad, even the bad outcome might not be that far outside of your expectation of how that situation could have occurred. Kids have very, very narrow expectations, and their minds operate on principles of what they gain and lose, and things like social influence, and reward, and punishment. Not until adulthood do we start to operate on principles of right and wrong, or legal and illegal. Some people mature into that earlier, some later, and some very slowly throughout their lives. But within that, the difference between expectation and reality for children is very broad when their exact expectation isn't met. Your job isn't to raise good children, your job is to raise good adults by teaching children to understand and accept the world around them, how to understand and accept their own self, and how to understand and accept others. Story 6. Your own children being afraid of you. No child should be afraid of the person that looks after them nearly 24/7. I really don't think it clicks until adolescence either, when you look back and realize that you really were terrified of your father 24/7 as a child. Or it's weird when you realize that not all children hate their fathers. Me, but for my mom. I didn't realize for a while that it's not normal to get a huge surge of anxiety just from hearing the front door close every evening because I knew it meant my mom was home from work. Me too. And she wanted that way. One of her favorite things to say was, "I don't want to be your friend. As your parent, you should fear me." Well, good job. You got your freaking wish. This is how children never trust their parents. I don't know why you don't come to visit more. Well, you terrorized me as a kid, and now you randomly scream at me for things that I have no control over. Thanks for the PTSD, but I have better things to do. Story 7. Parents who can't apologize to a child. It's okay to have human emotions and moments to be triggered or struggling and lash out or be wrong, but for the love of all things good, apologize and change. My parents are allergic to apologizing when they mess up. On the rare occasions they acknowledge that they messed up. It ticks me off to high hell. Mine just pretend it never happened and move on. I saw a therapist who worked with troubled kids say the difference between great parents and bad parents isn't that great parents don't mess up, they just apologize when they do. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.